It's July 12th, and the strange side of history awaits. Today, we have the beginning of one of Britain's darkest murder cases, a mysterious naval explosion that still sparks debate, and an impossible voyage that proved ancient sailors may have traveled farther than anyone imagined. Let's begin. On July 12, 1963, 16-year-old Paula Reed left home in Manchester wearing a new outfit and her mother's favorite necklace. She was heading to a dance. Pauline was shy, deeply devoted to her family, and so frightened of walking alone after dark that she asked friends to accompany her. But that evening, her friends canceled. Pauline was told by her mother not to worry. Other friends would probably be waiting, but she never arrived. Two girls later followed the same route, hoping to surprise her. They saw Pauline walking ahead of them. Then, somewhere along the way, she simply disappeared. Pauline knew Myra Hindley, which may have explained why she accepted a ride. Hindley later claimed she persuaded the teenager to help her search for her lost glove on Sandalwood Moor. Waiting there was Ian Brady. Pauline became the first known victim of the Moor's murderers. For years, her family waited for a knock at the door. Hindley even pretended to share their concern while hiding the truth. Then, 24 years later, the killers finally led the police back to the moor. Pauline's remains were discovered in a shallow grave, and her mother said the discovery ended the waiting, but never could erase the betrayal. Pauline was eventually buried beside her family, who had never stopped searching for her. On July 12, 1918, the Japanese battleship Kawachi sat quietly anchored at the Tokuyama Bay. There were no enemies nearby, no battles or warnings. Without explanation, a violent explosion tore through the middle of the 20,000-ton ship. Flames raced through the ship as the sailors struggled to understand what had happened. Within moments, the fire reached the forward ammunition magazine, and then came the second explosion. Far larger than the first, the blast ripped through the vessel, and the enormous battleship began leaning sharply to one side. Men rushed across the decks, but there was almost no time to escape. In just 4 minutes, it rolled over and disappeared beneath the water. More than 600 officers and sailors were lost. Investigations later blamed the disaster on the possible spontaneous combustion of cordite, a smokeless propellant stored inside the ship. But the exact point of where the fire began had been completely destroyed, so no one could reconstruct the final sequence with certainty. The Kawachi is a haunting naval disaster, a battleship that exploded from within, resting peacefully in its own harbor. On July 12, 1970, a fragile boat made almost entirely of reeds appeared on the horizon near Barbados. For 57 days, 7 men had crossed the Atlantic aboard the Raw II, a vessel that looked as though it belonged into the ancient world. There was no steel hull, no engine, only tightly bound papyrus reeds, rope, and a single sail. Norwegian explorer Thor Heyerdahl had built the boat from ancient Egyptian designs. His goal was to test an extraordinary question. Could ancient sailors have crossed the Atlantic thousands of years before Columbus? The first attempt had nearly ended in a disaster when the boat began breaking apart at sea, but the Raw II survived. It traveled more than 6,000 kilometers from Morocco to Barbados, carrying 7 men from 7 different nations beneath a United Nations flag. They had crossed the Atlantic in an ancient-style boat, yet the crew discovered something disturbing on the way. They recorded oil floating across the water. They had crossed the Atlantic in an ancient-style boat and found a modern ocean already being poisoned. Another day, another strange bite from history. Like, comment, and subscribe. Your next eerie dose is just a day away.